They're not my sheep anymore, he said to himself without nostalgic, nostalgia. They must be used to their new shepherd. I've probably already forgotten me. That's good. Creating like the sheep that are traveled. Know about moving on, he thought. The merchant's daughter, and he was sure that she probably married the shepherd to a baker or to another shepherd. He could read and couldn't tell her exactly exciting stories. After all, he probably wasn't the only one. Well, he was excited at his intervention to understand of the camel driver's comment. Maybe he was also learning the universal language that deals with the past and the present for all people. Hunchies, his mother called them. The boy was beginning to understand the intuition is really a sudden immersion of soul into universal's current of life, where the history of all people are connected, and we're able to know everything because it was written there. Make tube, the boy said, reading the crystal merchants. The desert was sad and something stretched in the rocky other. The convoy was blocked by a builder. I have to go around it. If there was a lucky rocky area, they had to make a measured detour. If the sand was too far for the animal, however, they sought a way where the sand was more stable. In some places, the ground was convicted with the salt of dredge of lakes. The animal blocked at such places, and the camel drivers were forced to dismount the urban and their charges. The driver carried the freight themselves over such trenches footing and then reloaded the camel. If a guy were to fall out over the drivers would draw lots of point in new ones, but all happened to basic reasons. No matter how many detours, alignments it made, the convoy moved toward some compass points once established and were overcoming the return of course and saw on the star that indicated the location of Odysseus. When the people saw the stars shining in the morning sky, they knew they were on the right course towards water. Palm trees shattered. The other people, it was only the Englishman who was unaware of all this. He was, for the most part, in excitement in the reading of his book. The boy had his book and had tried to read it during the first few days of the journey, but he found it much more interesting to observe the caravan, to listen to the wind and such. As soon as he had learned to know his shaman better, to establish a relationship with him, he threw the book away. Although the boy had developed a superstition that each time he opened the book, he would learn something important, he decided it was an unnecessary boundary. He became friendly with the camel driver who drove alongside him. At night, they had sat around the fire. The boy related to the driver his adventure as a shepherd. During one of these conversations, the driver told of his own life. I used to live near El Caramo, he said. I had my own merchant, my child, and a life that would not as usually until I died. One year when the crop was best ever, I went to Mecca. I satisfied, and I satisfied the only unmet the obligations in my life. I could die happy, and that made me feel good. One day, the earth began to tremble, and the Nile overflowed its bank. It was something that I thought could happen only to others, never to me. My neighbors feared they would lose their olive trees in the flood, and my wife was afraid that we would lose our children. I thought everything I owned would be destroyed. The land was ruined, and I had to find some other way to earn a living. So now I'm a camel driver, but that this Saturday taught me to understand the word of Allah. People need not to fear the unknown if they were capable of achieving what they need and want. We're afraid to lose what we have, whether it's our lives or our possession and property. But this fear, but this fear. The book, the book that most interests the boy, told the story of the famous alchemists they had, were men who had dedicated their entire lives to the perfection of metals in their laboratories. They had believed that if a metal was heated in so many years, it would free himself out of all individual properties, and what was left would be the soul of the word. This is the soul of the world, allowing them to understand anything on face of the earth, because it was a language in which things committed. They had called to destroy the master's work. It was part liquor and part solid. Can't you just observe men and other men in order to understand the language? The boy asked. You have a memory of simplifying everything, answered the Englishman, irritated. I could, what the world? I keep pressing the wrong thing, losing my place. What was that? I was at 42, I think. Yeah. Okay, the Englishman didn't answer directly. He said for the past few days he had paying attention to how the convoy caravan appeared, but he didn't learn anything new. The only thing he noticed was that talk of war was becoming more and more frequent. One day, the boy returned the book of the Englishman. Did you learn anything? The Englishman asked, eager to hear what it might be. He needed someone to talk to. So to avoid things about possible war, I learned the world has a soul. Has a soul. And that whoever understood the soul can also understand the language of things. I learned that many alchemists and realized their destinies and wound up discovering the soul of the world, the atmosphere stone and the action of life. But however, I've learned these things are all simple, that they couldn't be written on the surface of the emerald The Englishman was disappointed. Years of research magically assembled strange words and laboratory equipment on this hand made an impression on the boy. His soul must be prevented to understand those things, he thought. He took back his book and packed them away again in their bags. Go back to watch the caravan, he said. They didn't teach me anything either. The boy went back to compound the silence of the desert and the sand raised by the animal, everyone in his own way learning things. He said to himself, his way isn't the same as mine, nor mine of life, but we're both in search of our destinies, and I respect him for that. The convoy began to travel day and night. A hooded Boudins appeared more and more frequently, and the camel driver, who had become good friends with the boy, and explained that the war between tribes had already begun. The camel would be very lucky to reach the Odyssey. The animals were exhausted. The men talked among themselves less and less. The silence was worse aspecting of the night, when the mere growls of a camel, which before had been nothing of growls of a camel, now frightened everyone because it might signal a raid. Raid. The camel driver thought it seemed not to be very certain of war. I'm alive, he said, the boy, as they ate a bunch of dates one night, with no fires and no moon. When I'm eating, all I can think about if I'm on the march. I just concreted on marching. If I had to fight, I would be just a good day. It'd be just a good day. It'd be just a good day to die. Any other, because I don't live either my past or my future. Interested only in the present. If you can concrete always on the present, you'll be a happy man. You'll see that there is life in the desert, and that there are stars in heaven, that tribesmen fight because they are part of the human race. Life will be a party for good at Grant Festival, because life is the moment where we're living right now. 2 nights later, as he was getting ready to be down, the boy looking for the stars, they followed every night. He thought that the horizon was a bit lower than it had began, because it seemed to see stars in the desert itself. The Odyssey, said the camel driver. Well, why don't we go right there? There right now, the boy asked. Because we have to sleep. The boy awoke. The sun rose in front of him, where the small stars had began. The night before, an endless row of day of pilgrims stretching across the entire desert. We've done it, said the Englishman, who had also awakened early. The boy was quiet. He was at home with the silence of the desert. He was content just to look at the tree. He still had no way to go. Reaching the pyramid someday, this morning would be a memory. That was the present moment. The party the camel drove had mentioned, and had to live as it he did the lesson of his past and his dreams of the future, although the version of the day palms would someday be. Just a memory right now. I'm satisfied, shade. Water and refresh from the yesterday camel bronze in danger. Now a row of dates from America. The world speaks many languages, the boy thought. The time rushed past, and so did the caravan through the Alcomist. He also watched the hundreds of people and animals arriving at the Odyssey. People were shouting at the new arrival, just dust, obscene desert sun. And the children of Odyssey were bursting with excitement at the arrival of strangers. The Alchemist saw the tribe chief greet the leader of the caravan and convoys with him at length. But now that the master alchemist had already seen people come and go, and the desert remained as it was, he seen beggars walking the street, the desert scene. The dunes were charged consistently by the wind, yet there were the same seas he was a child. He also enjoyed seeing the happiness that travel experienced when, after weeks of yellow sand and blue sky, they first saw the green of date palms. Maybe God created the desert so that man could approach the date tree, he thought. He decided to concrete more practical matters. He knew the convoy there was a man whom he was teaching so many secrets of whom he had told, so he didn't know the man yet, but it practically eyes could recognize him. When he appeared, he hoped that it would be someone capable to prevent opportunities. I didn't know why these have to be tamed by a mouth. He thought it could extremely. That's their word. God relieving his secrets easily to all his creatures. He had one explanation for a fact. Things have to be transmitted that way because they were made up of the purpose of life, and this kind of life couldn't be captured in pictures or words because people became, I said it with pictures and words. The wind forgets the language of the world. The boy couldn't believe what he was seeing. Rather than being just a wave surrounded by a few palm trees, as he had seen in a geographic book, was much larger than many towns. Back in Spain, there were 300 wells, 50,000 date trees, and tents spreading among them. It looked like the thousand and one nights, said the Englishman appointed to meet the alchemist.